Welcome to Curiously Kaitlyn, where we usually take a kid question about God, theology, or the Bible and find a scholar to answer it. This week, we are continuing our series of episodes we're calling Kids Say the Most Heretical Things, where we flip the script and begin not with kid questions, but with kid answers. I believe we have much to learn from kids in the church, both from their big questions and from their answers, because their answers often tell us something about what they have picked up from their experience in church, from the things their parents or other grown-ups say, and we can learn a lot from what they have to tell us. They have insightful things to say, they have funny things to say, and even where they might not get things quite right, we have a lot we can learn about why we believe what we believe.
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense.
Curiously Kaitlyn.
This week, we are also continuing our series on Lent and Easter. We've covered Ash Wednesday, we've talked about what Lent even is, and this week we are tackling a very different kind of question. What is up with the Easter Bunny and Easter eggs? What do you think the Easter Bunny is?
I think it's a bunny. He brings toys to us.
Brings chocolate eggs around and
Hides all sorts of Easter eggs, and they have chocolate in them.
God wanted the Easter bunny to bring joy.
Because it's God's birth. It's God's resurrection.
What does God's resurrection have to do with a bunny?
Maybe it's because he created bunnies.
It's Easter time, and Easter is a celebration. It's God's birthday, I think.
Eggs would symbolize like hatching new plans or ideas.
I think it's because his name has Easter in it.
Don't take this personally or sincerely, kids, but like, I don't believe in the Easter bunny. I think he's just like a man in a suit who hops around.
That is so weird. I'm like blowing my mind up now.
At my church, we teach the kids the church calendar, or some people call the liturgical calendar, we talked about last week with Dr. Isa McCauley. We give an overview at the start of every new year with the new kids in the classroom and kind of show them what the calendar looks like. We use a big circle and different colors to show all the different days. And then throughout the year, we return to it and remember, where are we in this calendar? In Advent or Christmas or in ordinary time, which we call our green growing Sundays. And they especially love the red spot on the calendar for Pentecost. But while many of our Christmas rhythms still look recognizably Christian, right? You go outside and people give presents and there's Christmas trees, and some of that still sort of looks like how we believe Christmas to be. There still are mangers with little baby Jesuses. Easter is a little bit of a weird one. While many Christians, including Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant folks, are preparing for Easter by practicing Lent, the rest of the world looks very different. Most stores are already full of Easter decorations, spring flowers, pastel colors, Easter bunnies, and Easter presents, little baskets with plastic eggs filled with candy. Sometimes the baskets are really elaborate, full of different themed trinkets and gifts for kids. Where did any of that come from? What on earth does the Easter bunny have to do with Jesus dying on the cross and rising from the dead? And should Christians even participate in any of that? The Easter Bunny and Easter eggs have a long and winding history, and it starts beyond Christianity. Lots of European folklore depicted hares as symbols of fertility and springtime, and even immortality. Hares, you might not know, are like bunnies, but they're not actually the same thing. This was maybe the most surprising thing that I learned doing this research. Hares and bunnies are different things, but they look similar, and we think of them similarly. Some Christians throughout history adopted this symbol of the hare in Christian artwork. There are some medieval depictions of Mary, the mother of Jesus, with a hare or holding a hare as a symbol of her virginity and fertility. We might think of these uses of the hare like all kinds of Christian art. We pick up the symbols, the mediums, the ideas in the world around us, and we use them to communicate Christian ideas. It's like when Paul is preaching in Athens and tries to meet the people where they are. He draws on ideas they already believe to make a point about who God really is. But this one symbol of fertility and immortality, took on special meaning over the years, especially as it connects to Easter. And in particular, out of these various European traditions came one that would be transplanted to the United States in the late 19th century. The German legend of a hare that lays eggs. A 17th century German book describes it as a shy creature that lays eggs in secluded spots in the garden and describes this hare as an old fable. So there's an old German story about a hare that lays eggs. And when the story got transported to America, connected to Easter, it took on some different forms. While some early Americans kept the idea alive that the hare, we would later turn it into a rabbit or a bunny, laid eggs. And so kids were actually supposed to go into the garden and build nests for the hare to lay the eggs in. Increasingly, the hare or the bunny just brought the eggs, and they could be found scattered around the garden or lawn or show up directly in Easter baskets. In fact, we've lost a familiar feature of this tradition over time. We still have this idea when it comes to Christmas, but we've lost this when it comes to Easter. People used to tell the story that well-behaved children would wake up to find their nest or their basket full of brightly colored eggs with treats, while badly behaved children would find coal or rabbit droppings or other disagreeable substances. Eggs have an even longer and somewhat more Christian history when it comes to Easter. Eggs have been a symbol of new life for a long time, for obvious reasons. They usually contain actual new life. But also, there are some Christian traditions that sprung up around eggs that would later get turned into our tradition of Easter eggs. Some late medieval European people would pay the clergy, the priests in their church, or make donations to the church in the form of eggs. They were called egg tithes, and they would be due at Easter. In some countries, people would bring baskets of eggs and even leave them at the cross at a Good Friday or a Holy Saturday service. In places like Poland and Russia and Ukraine, families would take their whole Easter feast, including eggs, to church on Holy Saturday, the day between Good Friday and Easter Sunday. And the priest would bless the feast that they brought, and in return for that blessing, each family would give the priest an egg. Over time, the eggs became a symbol, and we started decorating them in a variety of ways. Originally, before all of the dyes that we have today, people would use onion skins or dye from certain woods, or even dye made from insects to give different colors to the eggs. There were different ideas in different parts of the world about what colors were most important. In America, we see a wide variety of bright colors, but there's other places where Easter eggs are traditionally red, and it's really important that all the eggs be red. Over time, the eggs got more elaborate. In 1290, King Edward I of England had his servants prepare 450 Easter eggs, 450 eggs that they boiled and covered with gold leaf. Pretty fancy. You might have heard of the famous Fabergé eggs, which came from the late 19th century Russian Tsar Alexander III, who commissioned the famous jewelry designer Carl Fabergé to make Easter egg-shaped trinkets for his wife as a gift on Easter, and that created a tradition that kept going. Some Christians throughout time invented Christian origins for this story of the Easter eggs. Now, these are not stories that are told in Scripture. These aren't stories that Christians necessarily have to believe, but it's interesting that we keep trying to tie back this symbol of new life to specifically Christian stories. And there's tons of Christian stories that have popped up over time about Easter eggs. I'll just tell you a few of them because I think they're fun. Some Christians have said that the first decorated eggs were ones that Mary, the mother of Jesus, made as toys for baby Jesus. Probably not, but that's fun to think about. There's another story that I love where Mary Magdalene boiled eggs and took them to Jesus' tomb. And when she found the stone rolled away, the eggs that she had brought that were white or brown were suddenly very brightly colorful. Another one that I really love that deals with Mary Magdalene, there's an Orthodox legend that says Mary Magdalene traveled around after the Ascension. If you forgot who Mary Magdalene is, not only a disciple of Jesus, but called the apostle to the apostles, because she was the first one to preach the gospel, truly, of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, running to tell the disciples gathered together, he's not in the tomb anymore, he has risen. And there's an Orthodox legend that says after Jesus ascended up into heaven, Mary Magdalene was traveling around, and when she arrived in Rome, she went to visit the Emperor Tiberius to lodge a complaint against Pontius Pilate, who had worked to have Jesus killed. And during her audience with the emperor, she picked up an egg to illustrate the concept of resurrection, to tell him what had happened to Jesus. He had been killed, but he had risen from the dead. The legend goes that Tiberius scoffed at her and said, "A man could rise from the dead as much as an egg could turn red." And then her egg turned red.
And now a word from our sponsor. Wait, what's a sponsor?
When was the last time you needed to go to a doctor, but you pushed it off? Made the excuse, "I'm too busy. It'll heal on its own. I don't need help." I think we've all been there. Booking a doctor's appointment can feel so daunting. But thanks to Zocdoc, there's no reason to delay. They make it so easy to find and book a doctor who's right for you. Zocdoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. You can even filter for doctors who take your insurance, are located nearby, are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and are highly rated by verified patients. This is exactly the kind of easy solution I need in my busy life. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to Zocdoc.com/Kaitlyn to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/Kaitlyn, Kaitlyn. Zocdoc.com/Kaitlyn. Did you know that an estimated 5 billion plastic hand soap and cleaning bottles are thrown away each year? And if that's not bad enough, most cleaning formulas are 90% water, which is heavy to ship, leading to excessive carbon emissions. We've talked a lot about creation on Curiously Kaitlyn and how we need to care well for creation. Well, Blueland is one way we can do that. Blueland is on a mission to eliminate single-use plastic by reinventing cleaning essentials to be better for you and the planet with the same powerful clean you're used to. The idea is simple. Fill your reusable bottles with water, drop in the tablets, and wait for them to dissolve. And when you're out, get refills starting at just $2.25. I use Blueland products to clean my home, and I love knowing that every refill is one less plastic container filling up landfills. Plus, it's pretty fun to add the refills to water and watch the tablets become a whole bottle of cleaner. And I'm guessing lots of kids would love watching it too. Blueland has a special offer for our listeners. Right now, get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/curiously. You won't want to miss this. blueland.com/curiously for 15% off. That's blueland.com/curiously to get 15% off. These stories are probably not true. They're also proof that we've always done this. Not only have we picked up cultural ideas and employed them to tell Christian stories, things like the image of the hare as a symbol of eternity or fertility, we've also always baptized non-Christian things by making up a Christian connection or a Christian origin. We do this today too. We take plastic Easter eggs that we all recognize are just a fun vehicle to give candy to kids, and we put different things in them to tell the story of Jesus' death and resurrection. Or we show the Easter bunny in kind of cringy Christian art kneeling at the cross. We want to take these symbols and show how they're actually really robustly Christian. And we often fail when we try and do that. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of this. In fact, it can be good. All truth is God's truth. Christians should feel free to pick and choose from different ideas around us and show the parts of them that align with the Christian story and the parts that don't. We also believe that all of creation testifies to God, so it should come as no surprise to us that the things that we see around the world, the stories people tell, the images they use, the symbols they pick up on, can point to the truth of the gospel. But we also need to know how far we can go with those ideas and where we have to diverge from them. There's truly nothing specifically Christian about a bunny that lays or gives eggs full of candy to children on Easter. It doesn't mean those ideas can't be used for faithful Christians to communicate gospel truths. But if we try and claim that this is central to the story, we are distorting that story. I don't think there's any reason for Christians to necessarily take pictures with an Easter bunny or put on Easter egg hunts at their church, but there's also not necessarily a good reason to oppose these practices. The people of God have always done this, drawing on those practices and images and ideas to point back to the gospel. If a church throws an Easter egg hunt to welcome the community and preaches the resurrection on Easter Sunday, that can be perfectly faithful. Other Christians might decide to forego the bunny and the eggs for the sake of their conscience or because they think it does distract in their context from preaching the gospel, and that's fine. But I think instead of opposing the Easter bunny and Easter eggs, we should instead oppose the way that Easter pastels and candy and joy and the bunny and the eggs keep crowding their way earlier and earlier in the spring, disrupting our attempts to first observe Lent. It makes perfect sense that the world around us would rush to the candy and the colors far before Easter actually shows up. Not only because people are trying to make money, because we are people with not much patience for mourning or suffering. We rush right past repentance and grief and straight to joy, even if the joy that we rush to is as artificial and sickly sweet as the candy we find in our plastic Easter eggs. Maybe the Christian response to Easter's secularization and commercialization is to start by refusing the rush to celebration. We spend 40 days of Lent preparing for Easter because we know that we need help appreciating what the celebration cost. When things are going well, when we're happy, we don't see the problem with rushing to celebration. We already feel good. Let's just get there quicker. But when we're mourning and grieving and suffering, we want to know that God sees it, that God sees the brokenness and the pain and takes it seriously. And the good news is that God has taken it seriously. So seriously that he became a man, entered into ordinary human suffering, died a especially horrific and humiliating death on a cross, and conquered sin and death by his sacrifice. Bunnies and eggs might be signs of new life in a very normal, earthly sense, but Christians don't believe in new life as a nice perennial idea, the cycle of rebirth that's just naturally found in creation. We believe that new life, resurrection, was bought with a price and comes from outside all of our earthly attempts to make ourselves better. The bunnies and the eggs, I think, can, however, remind us of the new life God has promised. A new life that is not merely about getting my soul out of heaven, but about God redeeming and restoring all things, all the things, the stuff in this creation, things like eggs and bunnies and flowers and grass and ruffly dresses, maybe even. We can miss the point of Lent and Easter if we're focused on the chocolate and the pastels. But we can also miss the point of Easter if we forget that this earth, with all of its good things, is being redeemed and restored, and that the God who delighted in his creation has refused to abandon it. So maybe the bunnies and the eggs can remind us that there will be fluffy animals and delicious chocolate and gift-giving, and I believe ruffly dresses in eternity. But better. Redeemed, restored, without any of the ways that sin has made us fight over good things or distort them for our selfish purposes. And if these things that we use to celebrate Easter can point us to this truth, that not only Christ died a death on the cross, resurrected to bring new life to him, but also resurrected to usher in a new life for all of creation, then I'm happy with the bunnies and the Easter eggs. If they can remind us of the good gifts God has given us, then all glory to God. But let's never forget that the new life we are promised is far greater than just the stuff of this earth, though we can't forget that either. It's not merely the start of another spring or the joy of new chicks hatching from eggs. The joy of Easter is the redemption and restoration of all things, including us and our wayward hearts and our broken bodies. That is worth celebrating. Curiously Kaitlyn is a production of Holy Post Media. Produced by Mike Stralo. Editing by Seth Gorvet. Theme song by Phil Vischer. Be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review so more people can discover thoughtful Christian commentary, plus cute kids, and never any butt news.